Have you ever wondered why some real estate agents perform at ultra-high levels every single year? Welcome to the Unstoppable Agent Podcast with your host, Richard Fournier. Each week, we interview real estate agents from around the world who are constantly ranked in the top 1% of the real estate industry. My mission, share with you their best strategies so that you can create your own peak results as a real estate agent. It's time to become unstoppable.
Hello, my name is Rich Fournier, and welcome back to this episode of the Unstoppable Agent Podcast. I'm your host, of course, but I am absolutely jacked to have a very special guest to me. Just because there's some similarities, but I've been trying to get this guy on on the old podcast previously. His wife was on our old podcast. I'm very excited to have Chuck Charlton, the team leader of the Charlton Advantage Real Estate Team here from Milton, Ontario.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm really pumped to have you. Before we get into the dirt of the business and the dirt of Chuck, I wanted to really just give a little bit of background around you, because we have listeners from all over the United States, all over Canada, who don't know you. They don't know where you're from. So Chuck and his wife run a team in Milton, Ontario, which is west of Toronto. It's part of the GTA, the Greater Toronto Area. Chuck, what you and your wife have accomplished, I think you started around 2005. Is that right?
2003, and then we moved to Milton in 2005. So we started in Toronto and then moved to Milton.
Okay. Chuck, you're top 1% in the country.
Yeah, kind of a big deal.
The reason why this show is top 1%. It's all we're integrating. It's not for any other reason, because success leaves clues. And top 1% in the most competitive market, I believe, in the world in terms of residential real estate.
It could be. Yeah, I know we've got some great people locally. But it keeps you sharp. Right.
And to accomplish, you have a team, you've had three full-time admin staff. So feeding lots of families, 8 sales partners, feeding lots of families through your efforts and your wife's efforts. And I'm just so excited. So whoever's listening today, this is somebody who's really done it, built it from scratch, and we're really excited to have him here. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, don't stop there. I like where this is going.
Do you like this? Well, you know what? So here's why I like the industry. It's such a difficult business. It sounds easy. You talk to people, you put some paper together, and you make a big commission. The truth is, it is one of the most competitive industries on the face of the earth. It's super difficult to make a full-time income, and your life's not your own. It's not your own. And I think this is where a lot of people in our industry, they look to people like you and say, how do I do this? Right? So if you can take us back to the beginning, Chuck, when you got started, I want them to hear a little bit about some of the pain it was when you first got started. What did that look like?
Yeah, my goal when I first, even before we moved to Milton, didn't know anyone, we were in debt. We were in Toronto. And so I attached myself with an agent that was introduced through a mutual friend, and keep the lights on. And my goal was to learn as much as possible. That was it, right? I had no issues with hard work. I would stay there I would be the first person in the office, last to leave.
Yeah.
Right. I'm well aware that I'm mediocre talent at best. Right. But I'm I can work hard. I'm the son of a mechanic. my mom was in customer service. I understand how to work hard. And so that was it. I said, I'm all in on this. And that's been a pattern that we've seen. It's you kind of burn the boats behind you. I think that was a Napoleon thing, where you're just there's no going back. There's no plan B. It's we're doing this, and that's how it's going to be.
So there's 2 things inside there I want to. So you started the business in debt.
Yes. Well, really, yeah. We had nothing. We were aspiring to zero. right?
Aspiring to zero to start the real estate business, which is crazy because we both know when you do a deal, it could take 6 months to do your first deal. And then you can pay for another 60, 30, 60, 90, 120 days. So
it took me 8.5 months, by the way. So for people struggling in their first year, 8.5 months to do my first deal.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of people struggling and the public doesn't understand, but to be in this business, to serve at a very high level, it's an extraordinary amount of effort, emotionally, spiritually, and physically to do a really great job for people. So 8.5 months, it's insane. And then
how I put the lights on was I stuffed envelopes for the team leader and I hosted open houses. I did whatever I could. Again, I got a little bit of portion of everything that he did. And I said, I know how many homes you sell. I've got enough money here from that, from almost being like a licensed assistant,
right?
To just keep going, right? You get to that 2-year mark in Ontario, you've got, almost like kind of a, I don't know, I forget the name of it, but it's like you kind of have this, do you know the name, Richard? Where it's like, it's not like an apprenticeship. It's like this kind of trial period where you have to get courses done.
Oh yeah. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and then you had your 2-year registered period. I know what you mean. Yes, and I was in the same thing, right?
Right, yeah. But you still have to do some other stuff in order to continue past 2 years.
That's right.
Yeah.
And so like you have this idea, and you said you burned the boats, right? You're taking the island. Well, okay, so like I want to stop there because there's a belief system or a mentality around taking the island. Like, I'm going to die on my sword right here, right now. I'm doing this thing and I'm not going to count the cost anymore. That is a really huge deal. And where did that come from? I have no idea. I wish I knew. I mean, it may have been sports. Like when I was in high school, I was very involved in sports, and it was just, you look forward, not back. Right. And it's nice to kind of say, okay, I'm happy for where I'm at, but I've always been thinking, okay, it's like, I need the 800-pound gorilla chasing me, or I need to have something that I'm really striving for, because otherwise I'm kind of happy, right? Like, it's like, I've built a pretty good life. And so I can almost feel when that comfort zone sets in. Right. And it's like, I kind of go, okay, I need something there, or I need something in front of me. That's that whole moving away from or moving towards. Like, I can go both ways, but I know that in my life that needs to be there. Self-awareness seems to be a common denominator among the top 1% in the industry. They're really self-aware of who they are and who they're not.
Yeah. And you can do the DISC tests and you can do the Colbys and all those kind of things. But ultimately, I mean, if you don't know what drives you, then it's like motion equals emotion. You've got to have emotion behind things, right?
What did Emerson say? Do the thing and you'll have the power. When you look at how you started, like, I'm sure you didn't have a big database of people that were clamoring to do business with you, right? So day one, how did you and your wife get started? Like, aside from working with us, one thing, moving to Milton, not knowing anyone, like, it's overwhelming, right? What do you do? Who do you talk to? Like, how do I meet people? Like, what do I say? It's overwhelming. What did you guys do?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, back then, much different time in our industry. I mean, most agents had websites that were just glorified business cards, right? So we said, I think the internet's going to catch on. So we certainly made that a focus. But no, we started with direct mail. And it was something that was unbranded. I give full credit to Dean Jackson and the Getting Listings program. And Dean's a genius. And so I registered as her. I knew him through by referral only and Joe Stum. And when we moved here, he launched this program called Getting Listings. I was the first person in that first group to get a listing. And we happened to live a half hour from each other. So he came down and we started chatting, and it was like if you're an actor and like Jack Nicholson called you to say, let's hang out, right? Or it's like, you know, if you look baseball and Derek Jeter's like, hey man, like, you know, thanks for, you know, signing up for my camp. And it was like, you know, this rock star of a guy. And we've been friends for years, and now it's, you know, sort of, you know, it's kind of equalized in the sense that, I mean, he's still the most brilliant guy I know in real estate, but it's just your buddy. Right.
Now he's become your buddy. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But back then it was just, and we talked about, you know, the vision for Milton and for what we wanted to do. And it started going, and we set this goal of 200K in our first year. And we hit it, you know, we hit it in the last week of December. And it was something, I never really was a goal setter. I just kind of like let life take me where it needed to. But I mean, we thought if we could do this, then that sets a course for us. It's like proof of concept. And so we did that. And then the second year we doubled that. And then the third year we went down a bit, right? We lost our focus a little bit. And so there's lessons within there. Then we sought out Kathleen Black. We got into the, you know, coaching about how to build a group of people that can actually do something special.
Where does that faith come from on a commission-based income, right? To go at it and generate 200K. I mean, you're barely keeping the lights on. So where does that faith come from to keep doing the thing?
It just sounded so unrealistic that you're like, I'm going to prove to myself, like, just either way, I'm going to prove something to myself. And it's probably the sports background. I'll be honest. I don't know, but the competitiveness comes out a little bit. You say, okay, I'm gonna do something I never thought I could do.
Right. And when like I've worked with my wife for a long time, and you know, good and bad, it's amazing and painful sometimes at the same time. And especially in the real estate business, where it can get very emotional and get very challenging, dealing with lots of personalities. And how do you guys navigate something like that? Because we do have husband and wife teams that are listening to this.
So again, I'm giving lots of credit to mentors and coaches. So Ken Goodfellow has been a friend and coach of ours. And so Ken said something.
Right, Ken Goodfellow, right? Yeah.
Ken Goodfellow, yeah.
Out of Ottawa, I believe.
Yeah. But I mean, he has a house in Florida. I mean, he coaches people all across North America. But Ken said something one time. He said, I want you guys to write job descriptions. And so we did. And what we found is the stuff that we were butting heads about were things that were on both of our job descriptions. So in other words, I thought I was the captain. Melissa thought she was the captain.
Right.
And so at that point, it was a great conversation to say, okay, who's going to take this over? And I think it's something you could probably do on a regular basis, where it's like when you start to see things not getting done, or you know, husband, wife. I mean, it's what's the tiebreaker there? Like usually, I guess tie goes to the runner, it goes to the woman, right? Right.
They hold all the power, Chuck.
Yeah, you know how it is, right?
I do. My wife's in control. I get 3 daughters, so everyone's in control of my house.
Yeah. So I mean, but I mean, you really want things to run as smoothly as possible. I mean, you don't want to have conflict and, you know, these you know, unsolved issues, which can often be what happens. Sometimes you can just ignore things if they're tough or if there's friction there.
And then you carry it over into the off work hours, right? Where the stress levels are there. Yeah. That's
we
really
negotiated a deal one time, and I remember the kids. Remember the movie Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt?
I just watched that this past winter. Yeah.
Remember that tension-filled dinner that they had? Like, we've had that before, where we were negotiating. She was on the buy side, I was on the sell side, and it was so funny. The kids are like, "Are you guys okay? Like, are we?" Is our family breaking up? It's like, no, just negotiating, kids, right?
Right. Whoever's winning, the other person is sleeping on the couch or something like that.
Yeah.
If you were to do it again, you know, what kind of advice would you give to an agent starting today? Would you advise an agent to join a team, or would you advise an agent just to go jump into the deep end in this environment? Because the game is slightly different than, you know, 20 years ago.
For sure. I mean, the age population has tripled. And I mean, we saw a lot of people get into the business during COVID. There were time to take courses. And so there are a lot of new people out there now. It's so hard because it's like, I can't transplant myself from where I am to like being new. It's, you have a different mindset and a different environment around you. I mean, the best example I could think of would be when a new teammate comes on.
Right.
And I think, you're either spending time or you're spending money, right? So you have to decide that. I think you have to say, okay, am I going to spend the time? Because again, we have recording studios now for, a couple $100, right? You get a couple of lights and you got your phone and, the world is your oyster. You can create a brand, you can create a following, and all these things, you can make them out of nothing. I mean, it's fascinating. We didn't really have that before. I remember I was one of the first agents to use YouTube back in, I don't know when, 2005, when there was just cat videos and like old clips of Saturday Night Live, and before Google bought them. I mean, that's how long we've been doing the internet and the video and everything else. But I think you'd do that, or you'd probably you'd find a way to spend. I mean, certainly there's paid ads on the internet. I mean, the reality is that's where buyers are, is online, right?
Right.
I still think that there is a place for old school things like note cards, for direct mail if it's done properly. So yeah, I'd probably be spending time instead of money, right? Building that up from scratch. People don't want to see you dancing on video. They want value, right? And in the last couple of years, we've made a conscious effort to really put out content that we think people would want. That's been it. So it's been, our social media. It's also been our mailing list, which we've been collecting for 15 years.
You have an outstanding website, by the way. If anyone's watching this, you should really look at the team's website. It's brilliant. And you ask questions, you invite people to join your lists, and very Milton focused. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, it's about content. Again, you've got to have the idea of who your ideal person is, and then speak to them. Dean uses the example of Dean Jackson says, it's like a lot of agents try and be everyone or everything to everyone. And he said, that's like a grocery store with all aisles that say food, right? Like it's accurate, but it's not helpful. So if you were looking for chocolate cake and you found an aisle that said chocolate cake, that's where you'd go. And that's the consumer experience right now, is they're looking for the chocolate cake. They're not looking for food.
And so, like, if you look at 6 months ago, Chuck, would you say that is a more specific focus now than it was 6 to 8 months ago? Because real estate was such a religion at the time. It was almost like cult level status to be in real estate and to want to buy or sell a piece of property. Now, maybe not so much. So is it more important to be specifically focused on your avatar today than it was 8 months ago?
I don't think so. I think the market is between your ears, right? Like the market is going to do what it's going to do, but it doesn't really change the reality that, people come to you in a state of looking for solutions, right? I mean, there's big life events involved in real estate. You've got, death and divorce and job changes and births and all these things. And it's like it's often a tough time for people. Like I'm meeting someone today where they just, married a very long time, and the husband has passed away, and now she's like, what's next? What's next in my life? And so we're a part of that transition. And I think people forget that in real estate, especially now. We have so many tools that will kind of keep us distant. We have Zoom meetings and we have digital signatures, and it's, I like that the market speed now has just kind of throttled down a bit. And it's like we have a chance now to present offers in person, to do things that are more human, and to remember that we are humans interacting with other humans in often delicate states on the buying and the selling side.
I remember when I first got started, so quite a bit after you, but 2009, where we would be driving around trying to get signatures till 11, 12, 1, back and forth. It could be like from Oakville to downtown Toronto, back and forth, meeting halfway on some side street to get an initial or to during negotiation. It was a different world, and it was a much more human. There was more respect for each other, right? And that's severely lacking, I think, today.
Yeah, but I just, you can't, again, looking backwards, there's no point to that. I mean, it's changed. But I think the more you can introduce that element where, get in your car once in a while, like go see somebody, right? Like we can hide behind these digital walls sometimes. Right. Even with, for example, like our Milton Daily Homes, like we send it 5 days a week. I've been a little inconsistent this year, but it's the mailing list. Their expectation is that I would show up and tell them about all the new listings and any news, anything that's happening in real estate, that they would just, know that I would have their back in a sense. And I'll share stuff, I'll say, look, like, kids just graduated, here's the picture, and, just things. We are real humans. I think that's probably as much a part of the success of that as just the raw data and information, right, that we provide through Daily Homes. It's, they want to know. It's almost, I heard this other quote, I think it was Alanis Morissette that said it. She said, transparent is the new mysterious. And I really like that. I think it's so interesting in a world, with social media. I think about some of my favorite people on social media. I think about, like the Katie and Daniel Steinfeld and all these kind of people that share their lives with us.
I'm looking forward to getting them on, by the way.
Yeah.
We had a message on Facebook the other day and I said, I'm coming.
That's the one that comes to mind first. I mean, I felt, when I met them, I felt like I knew them, and I guess they knew us. I mean, Melissa's more active on social media than I am. I like to say my life is so much better than what's online, right? Like I never want social media to outperform my actual existence. I think that's really sad, but I think it's, the point is it creates so much of a knowing and a desire to want to know more about somebody when they're putting stuff out there.
Right. You're not this hidden closet agent. Like, you're really out there and people want to get to know you. I think Gary Vaynerchuk said something really interesting. He said, don't create, just document your life. Show them what you're doing. Show them what's happening in the world today. And over time, they're going to get to know, like, and trust you.
Yeah.
Just because you're being you.
It's funny what people attach to, right? Like, it's, again, I'm more about, like, I want a message and value. That's the background. I come from direct response and the teachings of Dean, and everything sort of has to have purpose versus me just, share. Yeah, that I'm at the gym or something like that. Like, I've never been able to wrap my head around that, but I appreciate when people do it and do it well.
Right.
So that's something for me I'd like to get to know is, okay, like, at what point do you kind of share the trivial that somehow is interesting to someone but seems trivial to me? I don't know.
Well, like here, for example, there's like, before we started this podcast, the recording, actually, we were chatting privately, and I said, there's people who really want to hear from you. You don't even know them, but they've been watching you for a long, long time, and you inspired them to do what they do. And
fascinating.
Right. It's fascinating. And I didn't realize how many people pay attention to other people. And they learn from other people. I do. I watch people all the time. I'm like, oh, that's a good idea. Oh, I should learn that. Oh, I like how they're doing that. Oh, I like them. I think I like them and I don't even know them.
Yeah.
Right. And I like this business. We've created so many, it's a facade in a lot of ways, like, flashy cars or money and these things where you're bringing a human element to say, no, we're here to serve people, but they're going through really difficult sometimes situations in their life. And I want to be part of that. And I want to help them navigate this. There's a difference between that and then some agent just trying to do a commission.
Yeah, but there is a celebrity factor for sure. I mean, there's definitely people that have been on reality shows and they've built successful businesses on the back of something about them. I think our values and what we represent has always been about that person, to put the spotlight on them and to say, okay, what's the pain going on and how can we help them? And there's no right or wrong. I think there's many paths to achieve a goal, but yeah, we've just, you look on the wall and it's about relationships, authenticity, growth. Like those are our values within our team. And so that's,
you've outlined those values. Like this is,
you
sat down with the team and outline mission statements and values that you subscribe by as a team.
Yeah. And every team meeting, we go over that. It's on our website. If you go under, team approach and you go down, you can see that we're really, we're connected to that. And I guess that creates its own pathway too, because when you have an agent that wants to come on board, it's again, transactions. Like if that's all you're interested in, then, it has to be about more than that, right? The scorecard has to be, and we realized this a long time ago, that it's about the quality, not the quantity. It's about 5-star experiences. And it takes the pressure off, because quantity is an achievement kind of thing, but quality is kind of a never-ending race.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. Robin's talked about Kanai, right? Constantly improving at all times, right? Trying to be the very best of what you do in that experience. From that translates to many referrals and many brand new, awesome relationships.
Yeah. And another thing, I think, if I was going to track what has made us successful is to this whole like giving to others and putting the spotlight on them has translated into a real charitable lean in our business. Our client event.
Yeah, you mentioned that, and I just want to bring that up. You mentioned that in terms of the client family. Mm-hmm. Language is very important to me.
Yeah.
And the client family now numbers well over 2,500 people, and special events are run through the year for clients and community with charity as a focus.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything that you do, when we run a buyer class, it's like bring in food donations and, we'll do food drives and like we just created these Wu-Tang political signs. It says politicians are temporary, but Wu-Tang is forever. So we like to have fun. There's always humor involved in what we do, but for example, like those signs cost us about $9. We're selling them for $20, and then we just send the proceeds over to the hospital, right? That's, so everything we look at almost starts with the questions like, how can we support an organization that needs it?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's phenomenal. Very community focused. How do you, like, if you don't mind me asking, just on maybe a bit more granular level, how do you handle the speed of the business, the amount of hours that it takes to run an organization like you have, to work with clients, to show properties, to having family, to your time not being your own? How do you handle that emotionally every week?
Emotionally, I just cry myself to sleep.
I see your love of music on social media, so I know you have some windows to stress relief. But in all essence, I had a conversation with a client earlier today and was like, Rich, I just don't want to be. The pain of the business is greater than the rewards for me, and you somehow have switched it around emotionally and figured out a way. So how does that look for you? How do you handle that much action in your life?
Yeah, to give credit to somebody else, like Glenn McQueenie is a mentor of mine, and he's presented things in a way, I think he got it from Strategic Coach and Dan Sullivan. And, he talked about like what's fascinating and motivating versus like, what do you hate doing? And it's oftentimes that fascinating, motivating is where you make, $200, $500 an hour. And it's like the stuff that you're not good at, that's your $10 an hour jobs. Like it's even less than minimum wage, right? So I've really tried, like, versus wearing 30 hats, is to say, okay, what are the 5 or 10 hats that I should be wearing, the 5 or 10 hats that make the economic engine run and that I enjoy, right? Like and then you have to have the courage at some point to let go of things, right? It's to have freedom, you have to give up control. And a lot of agents struggle with that, and their business is built on them. It's that Siegfried and Roy model where it's like, okay, what happens if things don't go your way, or if you're not around anymore? So sharing the load, letting people play their best game, because some agents just have it baked into them. They need to be number one, but I'm trying to play the game where it's like, can I make them better than me, right? Can I sort of elevate them and help them get to their place? And it all, again, it lines up with the values on the wall. But yeah, so probably wearing less hats, right? Like just doing the things that you're good at. I think a big step for me, and what I try and teach the agents to do on the team is to create those big rocks, the Stephen Covey concept, right? The important things, and make them a calendar focus. And I think I'm a big fan of regular things that show up in the calendar, right?
If it's not in there, it doesn't exist, right?
Well, yeah, like an example would be my parents at one point were saying like, hey, we're not seeing you. And it's just, and I was just, again, what's in front, moving. And I said, well, let's create every Wednesday where we come over for dinner. Right. And that's been locked in for years now. And it's, my high school friends, like I love them to death. We just kind of would let 6 months go by and we wouldn't talk. So I said, can we talk every 2 weeks on Zoom? Let's eliminate the physical distance barrier and let's just talk, right? Let's just get on a call and just see what's up with each other. And so all those things, right? Whether it's lead generation or whether it's doing Milton Daily Homes or anything else, like if it's not a recurring event, exercise, right? Like it's not going to happen. That's what I've found, especially when you reach a certain point where things are coming at you quick.
Right. When you look at the dreaded prospecting conversation.
Yeah.
Right, still a part of your business today?
In a different way, because me sending an email that's leveraged to 5,000 people for Daily Homes is my version of, that's my hour of power, right? So I like that because as I add names in, whether or not there's 5,000 or 6,000 or 10,000 people, we had it as high as 15, and then we just took away the people, like the open rates kind of went up. And
right.
But I think for that, I like that it was the same behavior. It didn't require me to scale, right? It didn't require, as the group of people doubled, I didn't have to double the efforts.
100%. And this is like, you didn't have to expand yourself. It was just group expanded, but I can be the same way.
But between Daily Homes, on a like multiple times a week, plus we have a sold watch report that goes out and we have a condo report. So I'm prospecting my own way by writing emails and content, probably at least 10 hours a week.
Wow. And so it's interesting to our listeners where people say, we're always harping on people, you need names, phone numbers, and emails. You still got a good old fashioned email. It's very, very important. And here's an example of someone who's made it a focus. And now maybe you don't have to pick up the phone as much as you used to because you've used technology to lever information and provide value on a mass scale with the click of a button.
Yeah, but there's accountability built in, because I think a lot of agents, what they do is they just say, well, it's okay if I don't do it today. And it's
right. Daily Homes, right?
Right. It's like people expect, like they will email me and say like, I didn't get today's episode. Am I still on the list? And it's like, don't worry, it's coming. Like, I'm just a little, things are a little hairy today, it's
right.
But I like that. That's Seth Godin said that is like, the real test of value is someone going to miss you when it's not there, when you're gone. I think all of this is under that, the Eisenhower matrix, where it's like the urgent, important, not urgent, not important kind of thing. I think everything good in life happens in not urgent, but important. Because when it's urgent and important, we do it. It's like, oh my God, I got to do this offer now, or this buyer wants to see a place. But it's like, if you can create more time, like everything, like lead generation and marketing and working on the business and your health and all those kind of things. I realized this right when COVID started, and I kind of became unemployed for a little while, because I've been working since I was 14, right? Like I've not stopped until COVID kind of forced the world just to shut down for a little while. But I thought, it's that stuff that really will determine the quality of your life. Not urgent, but important. Because no one's going to.
I've never heard it put that way specifically, because that's what creates the ease in your life. It actually is a revenue generating activity, but not immediately.
That's right. Or exercise, same thing. If I don't work out today, I'm not going to suffer. But if I create a pattern where I don't work out for years, then the quality of my life goes down. So that's not urgent, but it's important. Right. So just things like that. It's just, I've seen the wisdom in trying to fit those things into the schedule, because the urgent and important, those are the fires. They're just gonna come up, and you have to deal with them when they do.
As a professional in the real estate business, like, you are a professional. You have systems and processes, team members, team partners. That's not rare. I mean, sorry, that is extremely rare. Was there a significant decision or something that happened that made you say, I don't want to be on the treadmill anymore. I want to create an organization working together towards a common destination? Like, what was that switch for you?
Yeah, it was probably burnout for Melissa and I. I mean, we were working at one point, like, 80, 90 hours a week. And we would go on vacation 3 or 4 times a year, which was good. Most people would say that's a success, but it was to just hide from the business. Like, it was too much of an 800-pound gorilla chasing us, where we just felt like we would just crash. We would go for a week and sleep on a beach in Mexico. And that was full recovery, so that we could build ourselves back up, so that we could just kind of hit it hard again. And so the thinking was with the team is, if we could create, because the income at that point was good, if we could create a structure where we could make as much or close to, and just get time back.
Right.
And it kind of coincided with when we had our first daughter. It was like, okay, we can't work the way we've been working.
Right.
At least one of us has to be around to support our kids, and everything changes when you have kids, right? Your priorities. I remember holding my daughter, Vivian, my eldest, and it's like instantly things just changed. I never wanted to hold babies before. And it's like, when I held her, I was like, I felt completely comfortable. It was this biological thing where everything just boom, it's like, this is chapter 2. This is a whole new part of my life.
My observation is that you're very insightful. You think about things, and you actually think about what you're thinking about. I'm not sure people have heard that, but you actually think about what you think about.
Sure.
And was there any time in your business where you're saying, I'm out of this game, I don't want to do real estate anymore?
Many times. Yeah. I just think when you're
thank you. Because Chuck, you see the stories, you see the glamour, you see the wow, that people have created this, but you don't see the pain in the back end. Right.
Oh, it's incredibly, I think we're all nuts sometimes for being in this business, right? It's just, there's so much, again, you're in an important phase in somebody's life. So you kind of like, you carry that on your shoulders, even through this year when, the market peaked and then it kind of went down. Like, there was this pressure to say, every week that home is not sold, these people are losing money. They're losing 10, 20,000 a week.
Right.
It was the same even on the other side with buyers. It's like, if they don't buy today,
before
it's like when it was going up the slope, it's like, if you don't buy today, you're going to have to spend 100,000 more in a month to get the same property. Right. So you had this, we've been filled with this run of change in real estate, this rapid appreciation and then depreciation that has caused so much. I mean, it's tough, right? I don't want to say it's been easy, but I think you have to look to those as signs. Like, even if you're procrastinating about something, it's like, if you're not doing something, that's often your biggest breakthrough, right? It's like the thing that you're wasting time about. And so you have to look to those things. That's the stoic mindset. That's the obstacle is the way, right? The impediment to action is often the action. And so when I start feeling like that, I take a second to just linger on it and just go, like, why am I feeling this way? Like, am I doing something I shouldn't be doing? Should I take a hat off? Should I put a hat on? That's all it is, right? Like it's a temporary state. But I think you just need, like, that itch needs to be scratched on some level to say, okay, what's really going on here?
So there's two things there I want to address. Just one, and the first one was, how do you pull yourself out of, I want to quit this business?
Like I said, it's just clarity, right? It's taking time to recognize like what's really going on with that emotional state.
Right. And then when you said something about stopping, like your biggest breakthrough is usually when something's stopping you emotionally. You're not doing, I don't think I'm kind of butchering what you said, but you said if you're hesitant to do something.
Yeah. If you're procrastinating, it's often the area that represents the biggest breakthrough, right? If you're not exercising, but you should, and that's procrastination. Sometimes it means you're not as clear about your why.
Okay.
But I think that like that, if you did that, that could be the thing that changes everything, right? If you're procrastinating about lead, conversion or generation, it's like, that's probably the area that your business needs you the most, or needs somebody, not you. Because it's always who, not how, right? It's always, do I need to be that person, or can someone else do that just as well or better?
It's a really interesting insight, and it speaks to me in many ways, by the way, and that's for a whole other podcast. But
I saw you kind of light up when you heard that, right?
I think so very few people think.
Mm-hmm.
And Bob, a gentleman by the name of Bob Proctor, said to me, he goes, Rich, you don't think. You're just a pattern. When you start thinking, your life will change. And then you've got to start thinking about what you're thinking about. And then from there, then you can make new decisions. So you're not thinking as a pattern anymore.
Right.
And
no, when he said you, was that you
specifically? Oh yeah, it was me.
Or you as
no,
like a collective human?
But he says that's everyone, right? Yeah, it was everyone doesn't think. Very few. And you see the ones that do think, though.
Right.
Because the results are different. They're not normal.
But that's why we get coaches. That's why we get people like Bob to shine light where we can't see, right?
Oh my God, it was like a punch in the gut. You think, but you really don't. And in that moment, I realized that I had so much to learn, especially in this business, because this business is a very unique business. It requires you to wear so many hats, to live in risk most of the day, right? To invest in a business that you don't know when your payoff is going to be, to maintain an emotional attitude of faith and belief that is irrational most of the time, right? And this is where people like you should actually shine a light, and it's going to sound corny, but you shine a light into the darkness for other agents, because a lot of agents feel lost. They feel like they don't know what's next. They feel like, I don't know what to do. And if I do this thing, is it going to actually work?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Well, that's the certainty, right? I mean, if you had certainty, how would you act?
That mindset about certainty, confidence, right? Tony Robbins said, the minute you have 1% certainty, more certainty than the person in front of you, you influence them in a direction. With that certainty comes great power and responsibility, though. And do you say that your business and Melissa's, like your business, was based on confidence and certainty that you can create if you choose to?
If you want to name it that, it didn't feel like that, but it probably was, right? Like I've heard Tony Robbins say this. It's like you either burn the boats and don't give yourself an option, right, or you create the reality so strong in your head that it almost becomes natural that you just follow through, right? Like where doubt doesn't creep in and inaction doesn't creep in. It just becomes like, there's only one way, right? We think, and this is like when we have too many options, we just pause oftentimes, right? We just go, well, this or that. And then in the meantime, somebody's blowing right by you, right? Somebody who has more focus is just going, that's the way. And then you watch, right, you eat their dust, right?
Dispenza says, that the mind is an artifact of the past, And what he means by that is you can live in the past, or you can make the brain a map to the future. And that's what Tony said, right? You're creating something in your mind, creating something that no one else can see, and you're holding it, and you're literally collapsing reality around it to create it in the future and now. And it's a fascinating concept to me. And that's really what I've come to see with most, I'd say 99.9% of the top 1%. They see something that no one else sees, but they believe it. And they act like with irrational exuberance towards something that no one else can see. And they just do it, and they don't think anymore. They just go.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing to watch if you pay attention.
It is. And musicians would have it. It's
right.
like they create this song that they just, and if you've ever heard Michael Jackson, he will like mouth all the instruments, and he'll start humming a melody, and it's like you can hear it develop, and it's so magical. It's I think really if I sort of self-identify as a creator, like all the things that you like as a kid growing up tend to manifest themselves later on in your life, right? That's why I like mixing music and creating, putting two songs together that I would never expect. That's why I love cooking, right? It's when I was a kid, I loved building Legos. I loved drawing, and it was just this creative process for me. Has to manifest itself. Like that's one of the things where if I don't do that in my business for long enough, I will start to crave it. I will start to say no to certain things so that I can start saying, okay, how can I build something? I can't be a doer all the time, like in the sense of like being in a sales role. I have to have this outlet where I make something from nothing. Or I think a lot of the success for us has been taking something that a great idea that I know works, and just either putting it straight in or just putting a little bit of a kind of Charlton twist on it.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you do every day to keep yourself in this beautiful state that you are in? Like, a lot of people let their emotions get the best of them, and they live in fear, they live in doubt. What kind of advice can you give those agents who are maybe wallowing and I'm not being judgmental, they're in a place of, I don't know how to get out of this pain?
Right. I think there's seasons, like you and I have talked about that, like where it's like this too shall pass, like all those things that like nothing lasts forever. We are in, we're on the doorstep of fall, and it's like the leaves change and snow is going to hit the ground. And then, at some point next year, it'll start raining and all the snow is going to melt, and then it'll get really hot. And it's like all these, and then in Toronto, there'll be construction. So right? That's our joke, right?
It's sure. I'm not going downtown.
Yeah. But it's natural to have seasons. So I think, just don't fall too far down the hole. It's just pick yourself up and dust yourself off, and it's okay. And I think you just start moving, right? It's like you just put one foot in front of the other. You recognize that hard work beats talent almost every time.
Yeah.
And move in a direction. Like when I fell into real estate, most of us don't aspire to be real estate agents. That's the other thing. You're
second,
talking
third,
about,
or fourth career, right?
Yeah. Right. But you just kind of like, how you got there was you just found a way that didn't work, and then you somehow made it into this industry. Right. Like, okay, the path to astronaut is not working out, so I'm gonna try this out. And that's what it was for me. It's like I figured, well, we were gonna buy a house at some point, and so why not just, if nothing else, me getting paid on that first deal would pay for the courses. That's exactly the mindset I had. Right. It's like, well, maybe it'll be good for me, maybe it won't. I mean, I didn't do anything at that point to lead me to believe I'd have a career in anything. I was just wandering a little bit. And it's like, it's okay to do that. It's okay to have bad days. It's okay to say, like, what am I doing? And you just, but if you sit there too long, the inertia of that can be devastating. So it's just, if it's almost like if you're in motion, it's okay to take a break. And if you're taking a break, you got to get in motion. You got to switch it up, right? Again, it's about never being the same as you were.
So somebody once said that 95% of success is the mind, right? It's the mind, it's our belief systems, and 5% is strategy. Where do you fall in that equation? Like your belief system? Is that true for you?
I would like to think that I'm probably 5% mind and 95% action, right? That I just, I mean, it's, we're having a very conceptual conversation. Sure. We're having, a lot of great things that are coming out of it. I just think you have to start, roll the sleeves up and you have to say, I'm doing something today. I mean, we are unemployed every day of our life in real estate, and many entrepreneurs are. So what are you doing to go get a client? What are you doing to make things better? For me, I serve two people. I serve my clients. I'm still involved in a kind of a sales role, but I'm also a mentor for our team, right? It's very important to me that they hit their goals.
Got it.
Because it's a non-zero game. It's like if they hit their goals, I hit mine. If they don't hit their goals, I don't hit mine. So we're in this together. Right.
Is there a book that you can recommend to any agents out there who want to perform just a little bit better?
Yeah.
It's
funny. I haven't read as many books in the last 5 to 8 years as I did at the start of my career, where I would just churn through hundreds. Yeah. There's a book called The Shallows, which talks about how our brains are changing. It's harder for university professors to read papers because the internet has just kind of like messed us up. Can you digest that in 140 characters for me?
Right.
Can you put this?
Right. Just summarize it real quick, because I can't have the patience or the time to look at it.
I find it harder to read a book than I used to. That being said, some of the foundational ones like Think and Grow Rich for me was a big one. I was somebody who was brought up to seek stability and security. Yes. So, like that all came from my parents, is go to university, get a stable job, get benefits. And it was interesting because a few years after that, my dad actually got laid off, and I was still in. It's like I was in the unstable job, but yet it felt more stable in a way.
You were in control. Right.
Yeah. It was just, but it's like you have to build to that point, because many people in real estate right now, I mean, I think in Ontario, it's like the average agent does 3 or 4 transactions a year kind of thing.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
Like 80% of the industry sells 5 homes or less, or whatever the numbers are. But the point
is very close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a small group of people that are doing the vast majority of business, right? But I guess, I don't know, like books, like Think and Grow Rich was one, Influence by Robert Cialdini was a big one. So The 6 Weapons of Influence for me was a great marketing lesson. That's a great book because it'll kind of you'll carry those lessons forever. And you'll notice when you watch commercials, when somebody knocks on your door to sell you something, you'll notice those weapons of influence really well. And when you understand them, I think there's a lot of carryover into our industry and how people make decisions. There's lots of great books on neurolinguistics. I think the language and the way that we communicate is something that we always have. It's a tool belt that exists 24 hours a day. So knowing how to speak to somebody to convey a message is really important.
It really is, especially when you're talking to people who are in very stressful situations and trying to make sound decisions, and they come from different places in life.
Yeah. And I've always seen you as somebody who's a very skilled communicator. You choose words well. I think that you're clear in how you convey messages. And so that's something like there's tons of books about NLP and communication and crucial conversations, and, get into that mode, right? Like we are helping people. Like that's one of our big roles in real estate, is to help people get clear, to help them make decisions that are good for them, choices that will impact their life. So why don't we spend time with language?
So very few agents have decided to be a professional. And what I mean by professional is to understand that it's not just about a piece of paper or a piece of mortar or a piece of granite. It's about people and striving to become best in class at my communication, best in class at making people feel good, best in class at my education around structuring a deal, best in class about my attitude. Like, if I was the very best in the industry, how would I be? How would I think? And how would I act every single day? And very few people do. The ones that do, they're in the top 1%.
Yeah. I mean, I think, if you want to be in the top 1%, I mean, a good way to think about it is to help people get really clear about things. So be a good communicator and bring value, right? Like, just bring solutions, help people see that your method, your way of doing things is the best way to go about it. And it's not just, I call it the 3 Ps, is put up a sign, put it on MLS and pray someone sells it. It has to be more.
That's right.
The expectation is much higher now than it used to be.
And I think that, I believe that agents are learning that right now through a lower volume industry, and they're having to perform and have conversations that they don't know how to have. And this is where, whether you use all these ideas like cream rises to the top, you see his pants are down when when the water goes out, but really the professionals are going to take market share.
Yeah. So working on yourself is always a good investment, right?
Always. It's really the only one you have, right? It's the only one you can control.
And for me personally, rather than reading a book, I mean, anytime you have a book, or what I'm going to suggest is like hanging around with people that are a few steps ahead of you, like not to be the smartest person in the room. All of that is just modeling, right? It's just taking something that somebody's learned and just fast forwarding right past that, saying, okay, it's like, remember in the Matrix where they just plugged it in? It's like, Kung Fu. It's just like boom. This, right?
I hired a lady yesterday who is among the very best and worked with a company, actually, you mentioned, but for many years, and I hired her to have conversations with me around conversations. Mm-hmm. And that 2 hours was well worth it. I learned so much in 2 hours about language, how to communicate the message that I want to bring to the marketplace. And what I have found was that people who perform at a very high level are willing to have conversations, and they're willing to share. And sometimes it's okay to pay them and say, hey, I need help. What would you do? Here's some money for your time. It's the best education you can buy.
Or it's an equal exchange.
Or an equal exchange, right?
Because when someone comes to me and says, I want to pick your brain, I'm just like, oh God, right? Like, it's just like, I don't want my brain to be picked. Like, take what you can get. But that feels very one way. And I've always been a big fan of when I, mastermind with other agents, or when I sit down with someone, it's like, none of us have figured out all of it. Right. And so it's like, I figured out some things. And if I can sit in a room with someone who's figured out the things that I haven't, and I can sort of say, well, here's what I do. And they say, well, here's what I do. That to me is another magical moment, right? Where you can actually, even strangers walking down the street, it's like every single one of those people would have value to add in your life.
Right.
Even the guy panhandling on the street I bet if you took the time to talk to that person, that they would have something to give to you that you would find valuable.
That's right.
And just to remember that, right, is that there's always, never walk in a room and go like, oh, like I'm the, right, like I'm the top shot here. Nobody's going to teach me anything. I love that servant leadership. I love being in a position where I always try and kind of elevate others. And what happens is you elevate yourself. And part of the reason I'm so willing to share things is because I've stood on the shoulders of other people. I remember that. I remember how it felt to feel like I don't know anything. I don't know what to do. I'm lost. And somebody was willing to take a chance and go, hey, just look at it from this perspective.
That's great. That's wonderful. You're rare. I'll be honest with you. I talk to a lot of people, and it's like, I mean it. You're rare. I I think anyone listening to this, if they can take the messages you have, I think they should listen to this 3, 4, and 5 times. Because inside of this conversation, we all know we got to put leads in our database, names, phone numbers, and emails, relationships at scale. That's the way I like to say it, right? But inside this conversation, there is a message inside there, many messages that people can take and implement. If they can hear what you're saying, they can have extraordinary results in their business. So please listen to this 3 or 4 times.
It's just clarity. I remember I listened to Melissa's interview with you earlier today.
Oh, did you? Okay. I haven't listened to it in a while.
Yeah. And so she said something about like, it's those stable, predictable results are boring, right? Like they're like if you look from the outside, it's a little bit boring. And a lot of people in real estate, you've probably seen this to be true too, is the business exists to entertain them. Yeah. Right? Is that or they'll find something that works and they'll go, well, that works. Let's go try this thing. Right. And they kind of chase the shiny objects all around. And if I could just give a bit of advice, just I guess we're getting near the end here, but like it's almost like your business should sustain you, not entertain you. Or the way another person said, I think it was Gary Keller, he said, like, seek to have an exciting life in a boring business versus an exciting business in a boring life.
Because the business it's boring. Like to repeatedly have conversations around the same thing day in and day out is really what we're doing, with nuances in the relationship. But it's really about buying and selling a piece of property for a particular reason.
Yeah.
That's all we talk about all day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny when you see, like, when you've lumped on all these accolades, and it's like you really take a second to look back. You don't stay there for too long, but you go, you almost don't know how it happened because it happened so slow. And I've heard people who are financially very well off, and they're like, there wasn't one event that caused that. It was just one day you kind of woke up and went, oh, I'm there, right? Like
Darren Hardy wrote a book called the Compound Principle, the Compound Effect.
Okay.
Well worth a read, right? Okay. Well worth a read. So
along those lines, yeah. Just those increments, those little
every day.
Yeah.
Every day. Don't live in the pattern, but every day live in the pattern that's actually moving you forward. And most people live in the past, right? But Chuck, I appreciate you. I appreciate your time. Once you give it, you can't get it back. So, and I mean that. So thank you very much. I appreciate what you're giving back into the industry. And thank you. And I look forward to seeing you in person.
Me too.
Thanks for tuning in to today's show. If you like what you've heard and you're interested in creating a quantum leap in your real estate business, here's what I want you to do next. Head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com and book an appointment to speak with our team. We'll get on a Zoom call with you for about 30 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. Number 1, what do you really want out of your life and your business? Number 2, what is not working for you today? And number 3, the exact mindset strategy you should be using to create massive change in these areas. Remember, creating massive, consistent results in your real estate business does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance to make it happen. We're helping clients all over the world create peak results in their real estate business. To see if we can help you do the same, head over to www.theunstoppableagentprogram.com. We'll chat soon.